Welcome again to the Zoom room, Sally.
Yeah.
Great to have you here. So I think let's just dive in. We've done our sharing off camera. Let's just dive into today's material, mind training material. So I'll share my screen with you. Share screen, okay, and then where are we? There we go. That's the one I want. Okay, can you see that?
Yep. So projection makes perception. The world you see is what you gave it, nothing more than that. But through it is no more than that. It is not less. Therefore, to you, it is important. It is the witness to your state of mind, the outside picture of an inward condition. As a man thinketh, so he perceive. Therefore, seek not to change the world, but choose to change your mind about the world.
Yeah, so we looked at this a couple of weeks ago, but it's really, one of the essential teachings of the course, this idea of projection perception. So can't really look at it often enough, to be honest, because when we've understood this, we've understood how illusions work, and we've also understood how to undo those illusions. Once you understand the mechanism that the ego uses to defend itself through those illusions, it allows you to undo them using radical forgiveness or letting go, changing the beliefs behind the illusions in your mind. Okay, so you want to read a couple of paragraphs there?
Today's inspirational quote reiterates the simple truth that to change anything for the better in the world, we must first change our minds about the world, and explains why. Perceive as ourselves is a projection of our own subconscious minds. It's really a mirror that shows us what's in this unconscious mind, of which we are mostly unaware.
Okay, yeah. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's always a good one, isn't it? And I think however much you know it, there's always more to reveal itself to us. So I was just saying when I was sharing about the house seemed very noisy and busy while I was trying to work, when of course that's my mind being noisy and busy, projected out around me. It's a good reminder.
It's all a projection, and then you perceive it as such, and you judge it as real, and then that creates some kind of alternative reality in your mind that's not peaceful. And it seems to be justified because you've projected it on one level unconsciously, perceived it on another, and that sequence creates your reality. And then you go, well, there, it's real. I'm perceiving it as real. It must be real. And so, yeah, you can't remind yourself often enough of this principle, because it's behind everything. You're doing this all the time. We're projecting and perceiving and making up the illusion of a world continuously. This is what our minds are engaged with. Everything's happening in your mind. Quite extraordinary. You go like, how does that, the power of your unconscious mind to do all this, to project an entire universe outside of you and then perceive it simultaneously as real, is extraordinary, isn't it? You go, how on earth are we even doing this? And that's all kind of happening in the background. It's below the level of conscious awareness. So when you make it conscious, you then start to awaken. You start to go, okay, I'm starting to understand how this works, understand the mechanism of illusion, or look at the darkness, as Carl Jung says. As I say, understanding this truth will accelerate our spiritual awakening enormously, as it empowers us to look within and make the darkness conscious. Carl Jung advised us to do in these two quotes I've shared with you before. So you want to read those?
Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. And the other one is, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own souls. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious.
So interesting take on it. Carl Jung was quite enlightened himself, so you you look at his quotes and he's pointing you in exactly the same direction as a spiritual master like Yeshua. Look within. Who looks inside? The kingdom of heaven is within. So look within and you'll find it there. And then, the second one, people do anything, no matter how absurd. I chose this picture because there's a guy who's a transvestite who's dressing himself up as something else. He's now, trying to become something else on the level of form, and all the makeup and, literally making himself up into another identity. And as he says, people do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own souls. So we go without and we try and seek some kind of satisfaction in the external appearances. Another version of that is imagining figures of light. So people can go, oh, well, the saint or the angel or the whoever they happen to pray to, whatever. If they're Hindu, they might have a god that they particularly favor. Something is, and I imagine that figure of light coming to help me. But they don't really want to go beyond and go in within and look at the darkness and make that darkness conscious, because that's when you really are able to let it go. So very wise, guy was Carl Jung, and giving us really the same advice as spiritual masters like Yeshua. Go within, make this darkness conscious, which is exactly the approach in A Course in Miracles. You must become aware of the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, as Yeshua calls the darkness in the introduction to the text. And then, only then, can you choose to let them go. You can't let them go if the darkness remains hidden in your subconscious, because you're not aware of it. You don't know what the beliefs are then that are creating the projections that you think are real. You think then that somehow they're forces external to you that are creating this. That's the illusion, isn't it?
Mm.
Not actually, it's a projection of my own beliefs, and I need to dig into my mind to find those beliefs until I found them, because that's the only way I'm going to get rid of these nasty projections.
Mm.
And really identify, that they are simply not true. And once you've accepted that, then you've truly let go of the cause. And then often on the level of form, things change. And maybe you get the guidance to take a certain decision in your life to actualize that.
Mm.
But it's really the collapse of the belief in your own mind that allows you to do that. Okay, so next one, to change our perception in this way.
To change our perception in this way, we must also change our core beliefs about ourselves, which is our limited self-concept or ego, because our perceptions are a result of the emotions, thoughts, and beliefs that this self-concept produces.
Okay, any thoughts on that?
Whenever I change a belief, I think, wow, what a shift occurs, especially when you do one of the core beliefs, like I'm not good enough or I'm unacceptable or something. And it really profoundly changes everything that you've based your life on, doesn't it?
Yeah, because that core belief is what defines you. It becomes the core of your self-concept if it's a core belief. And that self-concept creates thought and emotion and perception, as we can see in this diagram from the Instrument for Peace worksheet. It sits at the core of the ego, and that creates your life. What is your life made up of? But belief, thought, emotion, and perception. That's your life, as we think of life in this world.
Yeah. So if you're releasing something like "I'm unworthy," you're everything is based on that, isn't it? Every decision you make, every person you meet that you're attracted to have some,
Every interaction, every perception is based on that core belief. Every perception you have, but your life is made up of a series of perceptions, isn't it? Your life experience. Oh, I perceive that, and I interpret it, and then I perceive something else, and that's what's happening moment by moment. You perceive with the physical senses, and then you interpret those perceptions in a certain way. And that makes up your life, your reality. So that core belief, because it affects your interpretation of the sense perceptions, and it can even affect the sense perceptions. You can end up, as we know, people who don't listen, they can go deaf. People who don't want to see can go blind, or their sight can be affected. The beliefs actually influence what you see and what you don't, what you perceive and what you don't as well. So your core belief is the filter through which all of those sense perceptions now get interpreted. And then you create reality from that process. And what we're trying to do here is take away the filter, take away all of the false belief, and then the thoughts that come from that false belief, and then the emotions that come from those false thoughts, and then the perceptions. And you strip all those filters away, and you allow the sense perceptions to come in without the filter of all of that between them. And now you can interpret them differently. And you have another belief, which is that I am actually one with everything. I'm not separate. I'm not alone. I'm actually one with everything I perceive in essence. So I can't be fearful. I can't be anxious. I can't be aggressive, attacking. I can't be guilty. I know that I'm one in essence. And that belief creates a whole different set of thoughts and emotions and perceptions of so-called reality in this world. And so then you've transformed your beliefs, and you've transformed thoughts, emotions, and perceptions, and you've transformed your life. You've changed your life by doing that. And you've changed your world. Given the world is all in your mind, you've changed your world by doing that. But you have to go to the fundamental level that's shown in this diagram. Beyond perception, emotion, thought, and the beliefs of the ego lies the desire or the prayer of your heart. What do I truly want? Do I want to be a separate self? However I define that, a victim or a grandiose self which covers over the victim, essentially an unworthy of love, because that's really at the core of every ego's belief itself. Do I choose to be that, or do I choose to be oneself, which knows that it is loved, which knows that it is enough just as it is, because it's the essence of God, which is enough. God is complete, whole, perfect. That pure formless awareness of perfect love is complete and whole. There's nothing lacking in that. So if I am that, then I can't be unworthy or lacking in any way. It's not possible. But I have to decide, given that I've decided otherwise, and I've chosen to be unworthy of that, I have to decide for that now and actively choose it to replace the unworthy belief. So you deny the denial of truth, which is the darkness, and then what you have is truth again. We've denied truth, so now we must deny the denial, and that will restore our minds to the truth of who we are, which then changes our core belief about ourselves, our thought, our emotion, and all of our perceptions.
I just had a belief that just popped up. I had no idea it was there. And it's not a great one to have. It's everyone is better than me.
Well, that's a version of I'm not good enough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Wow.
So by comparison, everyone is better than me. Therefore, I'm not good enough to measure up to other people. And that's part of the ego's belief system. It's why it's obsessed with comparison. I'm always comparing against others and saying, well, I'm better or I'm worse than them, but never equal. Because equality means no individuality, doesn't it? There's no separate self. If I'm exactly the same as them, my individuality disappears in the sameness. So it's interesting how, when the more you look at this and you dig in, you do start hitting these core beliefs. But most people don't know how to go deeper than just perception, because they're scared of their emotions, so they won't go and dig into the uncomfortable emotions. And then they can't uncover the thoughts underneath them. And then the beliefs are really hidden under all of that, and they can't get there. And so the ego's construct remains. often for their entire life, until they undertake a process of uncovering it all, which would be then, spiritual awakening, using a technique like this, the Instrument for Peace, Radical Forgiveness, A Course in Miracles. That's one way. There's other paths that do this, that can ask you to go within and really look. Buddhism, good Buddhist practice based on Vipassana will get you to go within and start looking at your emotions and the thoughts that come up with that. Do they identify core beliefs? Not really. So possibly, in my view, you want to make those core beliefs conscious. If you don't make them conscious, they can kind of linger there. What I like about this path is it's like, okay, let's go very direct. Let's make it all conscious, bring it into the light of conscious awareness. Once we understand it, what it is, it's much easier to let it go. And you can just see when people get that insight. I did a session with Sue the other day, and there was like a ding. I could just see a light bulb went on, which she understood. Okay, actually, it's not really what I thought it was. It's that belief. And it was like, oh, and then it's gone, isn't it? Suddenly that core belief, the power of it's gone, because you've seen that it's false and that there's actually something deeper that was just a symbol of. And then it collapses because you've had a realization, and that belief can no longer dominate your thinking once it's become conscious and you realize the falsity of it. And that's this whole process. It's the process of digging in, identifying the beliefs, letting them go, and then what's left, once you've undone all of your core beliefs in a separate self, must be the truth of who you are, which is pure formless awareness of perfect love and nothing else.
I'm always very surprised.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, I'm very surprised when I'm on a call like this that these things just pop up.
Yeah. Well, that's how it works, isn't it? It's a field of transformation, and you're talking about it, and then because you're open to it, these things pop out to show you, because this is part of the uncovering process. When we do this, and you look at diagrams like this and you consider these ideas, it's part of it's almost excavation, isn't it? You've got to excavate your mind, and you've got to go into the core beliefs and really identify what they are. And so then they pop up, and because the Holy Spirit is there to help you, it's gonna pop those up for you and show, okay, then it comes into your mind, and you go, okay, I can see that clearly now, maybe for the first time. And once you see it clearly, you can look at it and go, wow, did I really believe that? Because if you can see it clearly, then you are not it. You see, you're not defined by it anymore. There's another awareness that's aware of it, that then is beyond it, transcends it. And now you can look at it and go, okay, well, there's that's a part of my mind, but I'm perceiving it with another part, which is the Holy Spirit, the right-minded part, that can look at that and go, no, that's just false. That's all it is. It's just a false belief. No big deal. It's just completely false. I don't have to believe in it anymore.
It's funny though, isn't it? Because, a few minutes ago I said your whole life is built on these things. And they literally are, aren't they? It's like, imagine going through life believing everyone's better than you. Oh.
Yeah, well, it's gonna create a life that is a reflection of that belief, where you're never quite good enough, you're never quite making it, you always feel somehow second best. You'll feel unfairly treated by others and by life, because that's what the belief demands, isn't it? I say to people, can you see that belief is never going to bring you happiness?
Yeah,
that belief does not work. You will never attain happiness, peace of mind, joy, fulfilled life if you hold on to that belief. And once you see that, the choice is obvious, isn't it? It's like, well, it's a no-brainer. Let it go. Because otherwise you condemn yourself to a life of continuous pain, misery, unhappiness, drama, whatever it is that you're suffering, just because of a belief. It's bizarre. You go, like, how could that be? How could a belief be so powerful? but it's because our minds have power. And so a false belief that's then accepted by the mind and projected out in using this projection perception mechanism becomes enormously powerful. It can govern our entire world, our entire reality. It can create an entire alternate reality as we can witness. You know, what's all this around us? That's the projection of a mind that believes that it's unworthy of God. It's unworthy of truth, is this world. So that's the power of the mind. So we must now start using it correctly rather than incorrectly. And you know, that's what all this mind training is about. Use your mind correctly, consciously, with the guidance of the Holy Spirit to reinterpret the illusion and bring you back to sanity, back to truth. That's the only purpose of your life. And when you decide that, in any instant, in any moment, that's the miracle. When you make that decision, okay, I'm going to let go of this insane belief and thought system that comes from it, and I'm going to restore my mind to who I really am. It's true awareness, then that's the miracle. And we're going to need many such miracles to awaken. It's moment by moment. We have these miracles. So you just had one. The moment you see a belief like that, oh, I believe I'm not as good as other people, and you pop it and you let it go, that's a miracle, isn't it? Because you just fundamentally changed your desire, intention about who you choose to be.
Mm.
And then
when they pop up, it's like it takes me a few minutes to adjust to it. It's like, oh my goodness, I can see my whole life flash in front of my eyes and go, huh.
And that's true transformation. Unless you go down to this core belief level, it doesn't deserve the name, because you that's what's really going to change things. Change your core belief, let go of the old core beliefs, and open yourself to who you truly are. The core belief about who you are is the Christ, isn't it? That's the self-concept that Yeshua's given us at this level to replace the false egoic self-concept. You see that? So he's given us a replacement for all of this, including the self-concept. The Buddha talked about, no self. But that's pretty difficult to live in this world with no self, isn't it? Because then what's thinking and what's feeling and what's perceiving? There has to be something there in order to engage in all of this, which you can't avoid engaging in all of this while you seemingly in a body in the domain of sense perception. So you need a self-concept there that's ultimately not true. We're not the Christ. We're just pure formless awareness, perfect love, God. But that self-concept of being the one self unites you with that, facilitates that experience of pure formless awareness more and more. It's the one self-concept that doesn't deny pure formless awareness of perfect love, but actually facilitates your experience of that. And it's a self-concept that can engage in thought, emotion, and perception in this world as well. So that's the Holy Trinity. The Christ as the core belief in who you are. The Holy Spirit is the reinterpretation then from that self-concept, the reinterpretation of your sense perceptions, and then changing all of your emotions, the way you feel about what you're perceiving, and your thoughts about it. And that's the Holy Spirit's function, to change all of that. So Christ, Holy Spirit, and at the very core, I choose God. I choose to be just what I am, pure formless awareness of perfect love, which expresses itself as this higher self-concept of the Christ, which then has various thoughts and emotions and perceptions, a thought system that comes from ultimately God, you see? So that's the way then God, which is pure formless awareness, perfect love, beyond this world of illusion, beyond all perception, that's the way that it gets filtered in and expressed into this world through this mechanism of belief, thought, emotion, and perception. And then you become a vehicle, an instrument for that presence, formless, nameless, to come into the world and express itself in form through you. And that then becomes your higher purpose in the world while you're here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And does it make, like, hopefully every time you see it, it makes a bit more sense. That's why we go over this stuff. It's like, okay, go, because something else comes in, another insight, doesn't it? And you
Yes.
every time you look at it, you get it, maybe a deeper insight, and maybe something like just happens, something pops up for you, and you go, okay, that's actually a resident belief, and it's just popped up, which I wasn't aware of before.
Yeah, they're so buried, aren't they? It's not obvious.
No, and that's why it's difficult. If it was obvious and not buried, it would be easy, wouldn't it? Oh, well, of course I believe I'm unworthy. Of course, that's the real reason why my life doesn't work. Okay, well, then I've just got to change that belief. I've got to accept that I'm worthy. I am enough. I mean, what could be simpler? If everyone could do that, the world would be a very different place, wouldn't it? Because you wouldn't have all these crazy egos running around causing pain and suffering and havoc and destruction at the extreme. You see any kind of dysfunction that you see in the news, there's an ego behind it, or egos behind it, isn't it? Someone believes that they're not who they really are, and then that gets expressed in action, and then it makes the news if it's bad enough. But behind that is a person who is deluded. They falsely identified themselves with something they're not, and they've believed it so much that they've suppressed who they really are, and they're asleep. They don't know who they are, and then they condemned seemingly to act out these destructive wishes of the ego, which actually do nothing. They're just destructive. They're life destructive. They actually accomplish nothing except destruction. Remember, the ego's whole thought system is a death wish. So all it's trying to do is ultimately kill everything and everyone. There's no positive will for life there. So you can see on the screen there, this is the Holy Trinity, just shown again. So another view of it. You've got God the Father at the top. Well, in this diagram, it's at the bottom. And we use those two terms, don't we? We go the higher self, going higher up in consciousness, raise your consciousness, or there's the alternate saying, oh, well, you've got to go deeper into yourself, as Carl Jung says here. He looks inside. You can look into your own heart. So either higher or deeper, but it's transcendent, isn't it? It's beyond the current kind of level of thinking. Whichever way you want to frame it. You could flip this. So instead of going downwards, if you drew that out of the page into a pyramid, then that would be at the top, wouldn't it? Or you could depress it into the page, and that would be at the bottom, like the well. The well, you draw from the well, and that's where things like words like well-being come from. You draw from the well, the source, which is deep within you. So there's these analogies of depth or height that we use, because that's the only way we can explain it, can't we? We're using the physical world and our understanding of depth and height, which is our spatial, 3D spatial in this world, to explain something that is beyond that. But it's in another world or another dimension. Yeshua said the kingdom of heaven is within. Well, it's actually the dimension. It's another part of your mind. Dimens means two minds. It's another part of your mind that's within you, which we can talk about being higher or deeper in language, because that's the only way we can really frame it, isn't it? And in a number of languages like German and Spanish and Italian, they have sky and heaven are the same. It's the same word. So then he says, the kingdom of heaven, it's a pointer to something transcendent. He's using the sky, which is above us and is kind of infinite and spacious, to try and symbolize to us, to try and explain to us what this inner dimension is like, which is there. We can perceive it, but it's not really there, because you can never get to the sky. If you go up in a rocket, you'll never get there. You just end up in outer space. You go, well, where was the sky? There's nothing tangible to it, is there? But it seems to be there. You seem to be able to see the sky. So it's quite a good analogy for this kingdom of heaven, because it's there, but it's not tangible. It's formless. You can never say, there it is. He even said, you cannot say, there the kingdom of heaven is, or it's over there. The kingdom of heaven is within. It's not anything you can look at externally. Which kind of leads us quite nicely into this 4-quadrant diagram of Ken Wilber, because it explains these different dimensions of consciousness or reality. So if you want to just read the lead into that, this process of changing your mind.
This process of changing your mind at the fundamental level of desire is what Yeshua calls a miracle in the Course in Miracles. And this fundamental change of mind usually leads to miraculous effects on the level of behavior and form outcomes, because our beliefs create our perceptions or experience of reality in this world. And then they are reflected back to us through our perceptions that confirm to us that the beliefs are true. This diagram that shows the integral connection between the interior and the exterior domains of life in this world, which is the essence of the integral theory and model created by American philosopher Ken Wilber, will help us visualize and understand this connection at a deeper level.
Yeah, so what Ken Wilber did, he spent apparently 3 years pretty much on his own. I think he saw 4 human beings in person during that time. It was the days before Skype in the early 90s. And he just kind of holed himself up and got all the models. He had hundreds of bits of paper of different models of development, of consciousness from all kinds of different traditions. And he wanted to try and integrate them and make sense of them. Say, okay, well maybe there's some kind of overriding explanation of all of this. And he came up with this integral model, part of which is the 4 quadrants. There's actually 5 other aspects. So lines, levels, states, and the other one, forget. But we won't get too involved with that. The quadrants to me are the most interesting, because it's kind of a map of this reality. It's not ultimate reality. You can't map that. Ultimate pure formless awareness of perfect love is beyond the model, but it's a map of this reality that allows you to navigate it more easily. It gives you insights into, okay, well, what's actually happening here? Where does this fit in? So he talks about four different quadrants, as you can see demonstrated in the diagram: individual and collective on the y-axis, and interior and exterior on the x-axis. And then where they intersect, you've got these 4 quadrants or domains of experience. It says everything has these 4 domains. Every entity, which he calls a holon. So I'm a holon, you're a holon in Wilber speak. But we're part, so we kind of seem to have our own identity, but we're also part of a greater whole. So you're a member of a family. You're a member of the human race. You're part of life itself. You're part of the whole earth. You're part of the unit. You see, so holon. You as you go bigger, the holons get bigger until you get to the entire known universe, physical universe. That's, I suppose, the biggest holon. And then beyond that is pure formless awareness. So that's where all the models deconstruct. There's no holon in pure formless awareness. It's just perfect awareness as one, because holons implies levels, doesn't it? As do the quadrants. There seems to be separation. You've got these different aspects: individual, collective, interior, exterior. So it's a model of the illusion, but can be helpful to help us to find our way out of it. That's the whole point. Is a model helpful to escape from it? So in the top left, upper left, it's called quadrant. You've got the individual sense of I. Right? I have intentions. I experience. it's intrapersonal. So I have a relationship with myself. When we say, well, I need to love myself, that would be an intrapersonal relationship. And it's subjective experience. Everything's in my own subjective experience. There's no objective reality. It's purely what I'm thinking and feeling and perceiving. So that's really what we're dealing with mostly in A Course in Miracles, isn't it? It's pointing us back to that, saying, look within, go within and look at that individual interior quadrant and understand what's really going on here. I understand that this is causative. This is primary and causative, because this then creates your experience of the seeming exterior, which is your behavior, your physiology, your body, seemingly objective objects, perceptions, sense perceptions, all of that sits here in the it. So and then I perceive it, other people, other things, seemingly outside of myself, even my body. But who's perceiving your body? There's an individual interior there that's able to perceive it. So you see that this is connected. They're connected. That's what's integral. They're integrally connected, and this actually leads to that. It's causative, but this also comes back and it affects the individual interior. So what you perceive in the seemingly external world can come back and affect this individual interior and confirm the beliefs that produce these. So this is how projection perception works. You have a set of beliefs, those get projected out, and you then experience them as external to yourself, which then by your perception confirms that your belief must be true. And that's the way we reinforce our ego identity. Whatever we believe we are as a self-concept, it's projected and perceived multiple times over and over and over again to confirm that self-concept is true. And what A Course in Miracles is doing is it's saying, well, break that cycle. So you may be projecting it unconsciously. So you see the external effects of it, but how you perceive it is up to you. You have a choice about that. That's really the key element of this. And any transformational modality, saying you have a choice as to how you perceive things, how you choose to react. So if you choose to react differently from how you normally would, then what you're really doing is undoing the self-concept that is behind those projections. You're not reinforcing it with your perception. You're actually undoing it. So it's unlearning this mechanism that you've learned so well. And that's really what we're doing with the Course in Miracles, is we're unlearning all of this, letting it all go into the nothingness that it really is. And when you've let go of that self-concept, what lies beyond this, if you go deeper into this individual interior domain, you find God. You find a pure formless awareness. It's experiential. It's subjective. It's totally within your own mind. You find that singular experience, that single awareness, which then takes you beyond the limits of the model. So I was listening to this particular talk that I put here. Like I was saying, oh well, you can't deconstruct these quadrants. Each one is independent of each other, and they all exist. Well, yes, within the ego's domain, that's true. But ultimately, you deconstruct all the exterior, and you deconstruct any sense of we as well, and there just becomes the great I am, which is everyone's I am. I am that I am, and that's the only presence there is. So ultimately, spirituality, non-dual spirituality, like A Course in Miracles, deconstructs this model. You go beyond it entirely into the subjective, experiential domain of your mind, which is pure formless awareness, the perfect love, or the kingdom of heaven, or nirvana, whatever you want to call it. And all of the models and the quadrants and this whole integral theory disappears because it's not required anymore. But it can be very useful to understand it while you're here and you're trying to operate in this world temporarily, to understand how this projection perception mechanism works is essential if you're going to awaken while you're here. And understanding how this works in the collective dimensions as well. So we've got systems which are made up of the individual patterns of behavior create systems, don't they? So, and we call those social systems, society systems, interobjective. So we have, a interobjective world apparently seems to be real outside of us. And we all go, okay, well, we can, perceive that there's a government, and we can perceive that there's, a nation, and that there's various rules and things that go along with all of that govern us. And those then have an impact on the culture, but the culture is what's created them. So again, the same feedback mechanism holds. Because the culture, collective culture, is then behind the expression of it. So whatever the culture is, that gets expressed as the systems, and then that gets reinforced because people say, oh, well, that's how it is, that's reality. So therefore it gets strengthened. The only way to change that is really to go within and start changing the interpersonal, intersubjective cultural domain in people's minds. What do we think? What do we believe? Collectively, collective values, which starts with individual values. You can't change collective until you start changing an individual's values, and so in the end, it comes down to each person changing their mind, which is where the course is directed, saying you have the power to change your mind. Trying to facilitate change on this level, changing the world, the exterior domain, is futile, because you're not really changing the course, which is within you. As he says here, you can see how these connect. This quote: projection makes perception. The world you see is what you gave it, nothing more than that. So what Yesha is saying is that the interior domains are causative. The individual interior domain is causative. Whereas a lot of people would disagree with that. Anyone who's a scientific materialist, there's many people who, liberals want social change. They're saying, well, the problem is that we've got these systems that don't work, and they create poverty, and they cause suffering, so we need to change the systems. And they get focused on that. Or they get focused on behavioral change. So then you attend a coaching course and it's all about behavioral change. Well, then that the lens that they're looking at this from is the upper right quadrant, the individual exterior. And someone who comes from the upper left quadrant, they're probably going to disagree, because they're going to go, but it's not really about that, it's actually about this. And the person who can only see this says, no, it's about this. And then you get disagreements. But if you see it holistically, you can go, okay, well, that's just another perspective on it. Yes, there is an external domain, apparently, but it's created, it's caused by the interior. So we need to address that as well. It needs to be integral. You need to look at all four quadrants to get a proper understanding of anything that's happening in this world. That's really what Ken Wilber's message is. In order to really understand it correctly, to perceive it correctly, and then from that correct perception to maybe have some insights as to what to do. And so, you can run this through. If you take medicine as an example and you apply it, this model to medicine, you can see quite clearly where the different domains would fit. Medicine, typically allopathic medicine, is focused external. It's about changing the person's body. It's about various procedures. So there's a whole system, medical system, that will now interact with the individual and will give it some treatment and say, okay, your body needs this and this and this. So we treat you, but it doesn't typically acknowledge the interior domains, does it? It's denying those, and it's saying, no, you're a machine. Your body's a machine, and if we do this and this, and we do this various treatments or processes or drugs or operations or whatever, then we expect certain effects. So cause and effect lie in the external domain. And now more doctors are starting to become open to the idea that, well, actually there is this interior domain to people, and their mind plays a huge part in their treatment and in their experience of it. And you have to address that. So a more integral approach, which then leads to alternative therapies. Instead of just treating the body as a machine, you start saying, well, let's look at the person's mind. Let's try and help them to understand this. Let's try and help them do forgiveness. And then you get, the whole domain of psychology, psychiatry starts talking about this. But typically they're fragmented. Psychiatrists have their place, but then you get a specialist surgeon who says, no, well, we're not doing psychiatry now, we're just operating or whatever. And it's not really an integral system. It's fragmented because people's perception of it is fragmented, because you get people stuck in these quadrants. So typically a doctor, surgeon who thinks that surgery is the answer to everything would be stuck in the external quadrant and wouldn't acknowledge the interior quadrants very much.
Mm.
And so you can see, like, just and that can any system. You look at medicine, you could look at art, you could look at business, any domain of life. You can get a clearer understanding of what's really going on and why there are seeming differences if you just understand this model. So then it's helpful, and then that's part of your own change of perception to correct it and say, okay, well, in the end, I have a choice about how I perceive this. It comes down to my own intentions, doesn't it? I can choose to perceive it in a certain way, which then will contribute to the external reality, my own seemingly objective external reality, as well as to the systems in the world. And people who are really powerful enough, who really go into this domain and master this, are called spiritual masters and teachers. And they then become the teachers of the world, who can change the culture and they can change systems. You look at Yeshua, had a huge, profound impact on the world, which has become systematized, became, this whole church system and system of worship, and that based on that, a social structure developed that really governed humanity, certainly in the West, for 1,000 years or more. Came from ultimately from one person, and then that got distorted and twisted into various different forms. But it started with one man, didn't it? With his individual interior experience, which he then expressed in a certain way, and that expression is what then created or taught the world about the internal. People listened to his message of the kingdom of heaven was in because of what he did externally, because of the way he behaved, because of his miracles, because clearly he was operating on another level from the ordinary human being. So he used this very skillfully. He understood this model, as did every spiritual master, to create change in this world, and ultimately help people to go beyond this world. So the model is only useful to help you escape. It's not the ultimate truth, which again is where people can get lost. Like this chap, and even Ken Wilber's going, well, the model is fixed. That you cannot deconstruct the quadrants. No, you can. It's just not within this dimension. You have to go beyond the world of time and space and illusion entirely to do that. But you can, and ultimately that is the goal. We're just using this as a way out, another tool in the maze to help us to get out of it. So does that make some sense? Is that helpful? Any comments or questions about it?
No, it's good. No, very helpful.
So if you want to take a deeper dive, there's a 35-minute talk on that, and there's quite a lot on the internet. You can go and listen to on YouTube. There's many videos and stuff on integral. But for me, this quadrant is really the most important, because it gives you this understanding of the different aspects of life, and gets you to understand often what Yeshua is talking about. He talks about a miracle, and he actually sometimes refers to a miracle on the external level. The miracle of in the external, the behavioral, is just a mirror of the internal miracle. And you use miracle for both, just different perspective. So the external miracles are a mirror of the internal miracles, which are the changes in perception, the change of mind that leads to anything on the external level. And he's saying that's a helpful process. We use miracles now because revelation transcends the model entirely, and that's inaccessible until you start learning that actually this is how reality works, by doing the mind training and seeing the miracles showing up in your external world. Then you start to believe, don't you? So it's using this interior, exterior, individual, collective, 4-quadrant model to awaken you, because you change your mind, you see a change in the external, you go, oh, okay, well, that then must be true. I'm seeing it, and it's confirming that when I change my mind, something happens, and I can see that in the projection, and that then comes back and it reinforces that belief. And now you get reinforcement for your new belief system, without which you couldn't believe it. If there was no reinforcement, then why would you do it? See, so you need the external reinforcement in order to change your beliefs. And that process is the miraculous process that he's training us in. Change your mind, see the external change, and then that confirms, yes, this new thought system is correct and true because I've seen it demonstrated that it works. And then that encourages you to keep going. Okay, well, let me do some more of this. Let me change my mind again. And you keep going on this process of letting go of all of your false beliefs, your self-concept. You keep getting the confirmations, the miracles in the world. And that systematically and progressively takes you higher or deeper, whichever way you want to use, ultimately transcending the entire model. So there's no individual, collective, or interior or exterior in heaven. It's just one awareness, which your mind has now been established in through all of the mind training that you've done using these models and other tools and techniques in this world. So yeah, any questions about that? Comments?
No question. No.
And there's the talk, so you can listen to that. If you haven't yet done that, it's quite interesting. It talks about really the quadrants, talks a little about the holons that I mentioned. So the idea is every entity is a holon, so it sits within another one and another one, and that goes all the way up to the whole universe, and it goes all the way down to subatomic realm. You know, you have a tiny quarks, they call them, these so-called particles floating around, which then form atoms, which then form molecules, which then form cells, which then form organs, which then form your body, and so on and so on. So understanding how it all fits together, but everything is part of a bigger whole. That's the idea. So nothing is actually independent. The idea of separation doesn't really exist. You seem to be independent, but you're not, because you're part of this bigger whole, even within the illusion. That's true. You're part of something bigger always. So therefore separation can't be true. So again, this can be a way out of the idea of separation for people, to go through a process like this and realize that ultimately separation isn't true, because you're always part of a bigger thing, a bigger holon. So you're not really separate from it. Everything's part of everything else. Okay, so that leads us to where we are now, the session, which we're discussing this all. So if you're happy with all that, shall we have a look at today's lesson?
Yeah.
So let's go to lesson 325. How long have we got? Maybe we can actually, we might just have time to do this as well. So what is creation? So if you want to read from the top there, creation, do you want to read the alternative?
Creation is the sum of all God's thought. Oh, just the alternative. Creation is the extension of perfect love as the totality of all its thoughts, infinite in number and everywhere without any limit. Only perfect love creates or extends, and only like itself. There was no time when all it extends was not there, nor will there be a time when anything that it extends suffers any loss. Perfect love's thoughts are eternally the same, unchanged throughout time, and after time is over. After time is over, that's a nice thought.
So he's pointing us always beyond the illusion. I think what happens with a lot of these models, only criticism of the integral model, is it becomes a truth unto itself. Do you see what I mean? So it's like people start saying things like, oh, well, you can't deconstruct the quadrants. That's a truth, without questioning, saying, really, is that really true? Just because Ken Wilber says it's true doesn't mean it's true. It just it means within its framework it's true. Within the illusion of time and space, yes, but there's another truth that that's beyond that. So one has to always bear in mind, and that's what Yesh is very good at. He keeps reminding us there's this other truth. There's another reality that's entirely transcendent of all of these models. So use the models. They can be helpful. They can help, as long as they're helpful in your awakening, then fine. But if the model starts to become part of the illusion that's binding your mind into the belief that this world is real, then it's a problem, isn't it? Which is why, as a foundation, we have a non-dual teaching, and then around that, there's all this other stuff that I'll bring in as tools. But you keep coming back to the truth of, okay, but actually there is another reality, which is totally beyond all this, where all of this just deconstructs. And this is temporarily helpful. It's a temporary model. It's not ultimate reality. It's a model that can be useful in helping us escape the maze of time and space that the ego's constructed for us. So any thoughts on number one?
No, not really.
And give a little summary of it. What's he saying there?
That we are an infinite, limitless extension of perfect love, and we can't have any what would the word be? They use the word lost, don't they? But we cannot be imperfect in any way, and it's always like that, which is a lovely feeling.
Yeah, unchanged and unchangeable.
We've always been like that, and we always will be like that, because that's who we are. So all those childhood stories about, you're not good at this or you're not good at that, can just dematerialize and go back to perfect love.
The idea that we're unworthy, that we're unworthy of that love, is not true, and it's never been true. And it's true right now that we are love, and it always will be true throughout time and after time is over. That's why it's eternal. There's never been a time where this hasn't been true, because this fundamental level of reality, the eternal truth, has remained forever. It's still true right now. It will be true in 100 years. It was true 10 million years ago. It will be true for as long as time lasts. And after time is over, it will still be true. The truth remains, unchanged as it is. So it's a completely transcendent level, which is the ultimate purpose. And that is the defining teaching of someone like Yeshua. It wasn't love thy neighbor. It was the kingdom of heaven is within, and that is the ultimate reality. That's the ultimate transcendent truth, and everything leads towards that. So love your neighbor is helpful in this world to learn that. It's going to help you learn that the kingdom of heaven is the only reality. It's going to help you learn the truth of unconditional love. But it's a temporary expression of this timeless, eternal, formless domain that Yeshua called the kingdom of heaven, or creation is another word for it. Creation is the extension of perfect love, is the totality of all its thoughts, infinite in number and everywhere without any limit. So we're not talking about thought in the normal sense of thought. It's capital T. It's not the thought of, oh, well, I've got to make a Christmas pudding, or how am I going to pay my credit card in January, or one of those time-space egoic thoughts. It's capital thought is more awareness. I thought about translating it as awareness, but it changes the whole sense of it. So I just left it as thoughts. It's a higher awareness. It's a loving awareness, which only has, loving thoughts. So in this world, if you have a feeling of genuine love and thoughts of kindness and compassion and care towards anyone or anything, then that could be called the thought of God, because it's coming from this loving awareness. And ultimately it transcends all thought on the level of form, because there's no people, there's no other people or things to love in heaven. There's just one loving awareness, which is where he's always pointing us to in pretty much every lesson, every paragraph in the text. He's pointing us beyond this world into another one. Okay, so you want to read the next one?
Perfect love's thoughts are given all the power that their source has, for it would add to love by its extension. Thus its extension shares in this extension. Its extension shares in this extension, and must therefore...
It's tricky to translate it. For he would add to love by its extension, thus his son shares in creation. So that's the original. His son shares in creation. His son is its extension, shares in this extension, which is kind of stating the obvious when you put it that way. Its extension is its extension. And so it must share in, we must share in the extension of love as its extension. Must therefore share in power to extend.
Yeah, get it. What pure formless awareness of perfect love intends to be forever one will still be one when time is over, and will not be changed throughout the course of time, remaining as it was before the thought of time began. Lots of times, wasn't it?
So he's pointing to the timeless. Eternity is not forever in time. It means timeless, no time. Time is over. And so we simply restore our mind to the same state it was in before the thought of time began. And that thought of time is the illusion, isn't it? It's the beginning, the birth of all illusions, which just see if I can find that. Not there. It's in there, I think. Where are we? Maybe not. Okay. Oh no, I know where it is. It's there. Yeah. So I'll actually put it. So the thought of time began the moment of separation. The moment we decided we were going to be another self, we liked the idea of being a separate self, that's when time began. Because that separate self demanded that we now have time in order to express its individuality, its sense of self, and play out its self-concept. And so time was invented. And the so-called Big Bang happened, which was just a projection of thought outwards. So that was the original projection outwards, wasn't it? The Big Bang, into now seemingly another domain. We created an external, something outside of the mind. We literally went out of our minds. It's interesting. You say, well, are you out of your mind? People say, no, I'm not. Well, if you're here, you're out of your mind. Aren't you? By definition, because you're in a body.
Yeah.
You no longer believe you're a mind, you believe you're a body. So you're out of your mind.
Yeah. That's quite interesting then. So the projection outwards is the Big Bang, when time was created. But not
time and space, they happen together. Remember, it's a time-space continuum, Einstein called, and he understood that they weren't real. They were relative. Time and space are relative. That was the theory of relativity. They're not absolute. They're relative. They change. Time is relative. Space is relative. Space can bend. Time changes depending on what speed you're going. And so he started to understand that none of these so-called laws of physics were absolute. They were relative. Hence the theory of relativity. which obviously points you beyond to an absolute reality. Again, he got stuck because he was looking for the grand unified theory within the construct of separation. And you can't find it there. You have to look outside of the construct. Beyond the illusion of time and space lies the truth, which means you have to abandon your models, the scientific model that he created. You have to abandon that ultimately. It's just a pointer to the truth. Theory of relativity, quantum mechanics, they all point you to the absolute truth, but you have to abandon those models to get there, which is what a lot of people struggle with, because the mind becomes attached to the model and it thinks that now that model is true, and it seeks to make that model something real and identifies itself with it. So it's got a self-concept attached to the model, especially as you become an expert. Now my self-concept is heavily invested in the model. Oh, I'm a quantum physicist, or I'm a cosmologist, and I'm very special because I know all this important stuff. And so my self-concept stops me from going beyond it, which is a shame, but that's how it works. Which is why I think David Hawkins, when he calibrated people like Einstein on the scale of consciousness, to go back there, said 499. Great scientists, 499. Isaac Newton, 499. Galileo, 499. Because they couldn't go beyond the thinking mind, beyond the model, into something beyond that, which is called love, just an experience of revelation, reverence, just a pure loving awareness. They couldn't drop all of that and go there. The model, their self-concept prevented them from dropping the concepts that they'd understood using the thinking mind. But fortunately, we can learn from their experience, learn from their mistakes, and we don't have to make the same mistake. You can use the models. What we're doing here is a process of using our minds, reason, to forgive, to allow us to completely let go and go into these higher domains, really deconstruct the intellectual mind and the self-concept that is inherent in it, and just have a pure experience, ineffable, pure experience of ourselves as we truly are. Pure consciousness, as he calls it, which I would call pure awareness, if you want to stay consistent in the language. Pure formless awareness is the same as pure consciousness. Whereas consciousness, any idea of a separate self, of separation, puts you in this domain of consciousness here, which is the problem. Any idea of separation puts you into the egoic consciousness, which then makes a false world, and you get stuck in that world until you can free your mind from that idea of separation, the separate consciousness, and go into pure formless awareness, perfect love, oneness that's beyond it. Okay?
Yeah.
So any thoughts on number 2?
Not thoughts, no, but I can feel it.
Okay. You feel the love?
I really like the feeling of no time, oneness without the time.
Yeah. So you're just floating in pure formless awareness. No sense of change, no sense of time. And you've had some experiences like that where you just, in that there's no time, isn't it? It's just
No.
Timeless. Which means
I find that on these calls as well.
So
like, we came on at 12:30, going to be here until about 3. That's quite a long time in human numbers, isn't it? As a large proportion of a day. But when you're on here, it doesn't feel like that at all.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, it's this unfolding. So it puts you into that timeless state, which is it's kind of the point. Anything that's leading you beyond time can't use time as can't confirm the belief in time in your mind. That's not going to work. It has to take you into that timeless state of flow where you experience what he's talking about. Yes, there is a a timeless dimension. Although things seem to be happening and changing in time, I'm in my timeless presence right now, and I remain in that. Really, it doesn't matter what I'm saying or doing on the level of form. I'm always in that. I suppose in these calls, you get the opportunity to just rest in that for a couple of hours and just really immerse yourself in it. Which is why they feel so good, because you just had a taste of eternity. A little gap in your day where you go into the eternal dimension, and that's where we feel nourished and we come alive. And that's the source of life. So it's going to re-energize you. It's going to help you to refresh yourself, to see things differently for the rest of the day. And if you keep doing that, that's profoundly transformational. As you know, I don't have to tell you these things.
That'd be a good selling feature on one of your posts. Come and have a taste of eternity.
Yeah, there's always little taste of eternity for a couple of hours. People say that's too long.
Yes,
you say you missed the point.
I've got to go and do something else.
I've got to go, but then you missed the point.
Yeah.
There is no time. That's why I'm very loath to go, okay, I'm cutting it to half an hour and letting the thing be governed by time, because it kind of defeats the object, doesn't it? The whole point is to take you into a timeless state of consciousness within reason. I mean, okay, so we can't necessarily go on for 10 hours, although that does happen with some of the processes we do in the course. But that's a process. It's like a workshop, that you've got to work through that. But it is timeless. I've done 10-hour sessions and it doesn't seem like 10 hours. Just kind of in the flow, and it goes quite quickly, actually. So it's starting to, and the people who are on the session say the same thing. Oh, actually, I can't believe it's been 8 hours or whatever. It's like, actually, it's gone really quickly, and I've been in the flow, and I haven't had a perception of 8 hours. Oh my God, it's so boring at all, because I'm engaged in the moment. And so there's no, your perception of time changes, doesn't it? When you in the moment, really, there's no time. It's just now, just the eternal now, and it's always now. And so the perception of things changing, which is what the perception of time is about, isn't as pronounced. It's profound stuff, really, mind-blowing stuff, actually, when you start to get into it. Okay, so I'm going to read the next one.
Number 4?
Yeah, number 3.
Are we on 3 still?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Extension is the opposite of all illusions, for the extension is the truth. Extension is the pure, formlessly aware extension of perfect love. For an extension is its awareness complete in every aspect, making every part container of the whole. Its oneness is forever guaranteed. Inviolate?
Inviolate, yeah. It can't be violated, in other words.
Or inviolate, okay. Forever held within its pure formless awareness, beyond all possibility of harm, separation, imperfection, and any blemish on its eternal innocence. Oh, heavy stuff.
And this, interesting, he talks about every part container of the whole. So he's talking about the idea of holons. Every part is part of a bigger whole, but every part contains the whole. See, so every part of the bigger holon has the essence of that bigger thing, because there's actually only one essence behind it all.
Yeah,
that's
interesting.
That's the idea. So instead of saying, well, I'm just a teeny tiny little part of a much bigger whole, and therefore I'm insignificant, because you can interpret it that way. Oh, well, I'm just so insignificant in the grand scheme of the universe that I don't matter. You actually go, no, but I have the very essence of the awareness that's behind the universe in me. I'm a part, but I contain the whole. So I'm important, I matter. In fact, that's the whole point, is for each little part to awaken to its wholeness, to realize that it is the whole. That's the the universal program that is unfolding for every part. So you absolutely do matter, because you are your journey, your spiritual journey is the whole point of everything. It's to awaken to the whole, and you doing that individually, but it's part of the bigger process of at one where everyone's doing it. Not even just people, every seemingly separate entity, whatever form that entity might take, an animal, an insect, a plant, a galaxy, a universe, it's all coming to the awareness that there's really only one whole awareness, and it is that. And that's the universal direction of this whole dream. That's where it's all heading, ultimately. Hence, eventually the universe will disappear. All separate forms won't be necessary anymore, because the mind will have realized that it's one whole. Now, in time, that's going to take, who knows, an enormously. I mean, he does say at some point, well, this might take millions more years, and perhaps even longer, for the entire mind to awaken to its oneness. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that you awaken to it. When you awaken, then the dream is over for you, and you've played your part in that oneness, because that's what your part is to awaken to the truth, that you are one, and there's nothing else. Beyond all possibility of harm, separation, imperfection, and any blemish on its eternal innocence, lies this pure formless awareness of perfect love, which has always been there, will always be there, cannot be undone, cannot be affected by any of what the ego has made up in time and space, which is very comforting, isn't it? Yeah. It doesn't matter what it's done, seemingly done, it's not real.
Yeah.
And therein lies our ultimate salvation, or awakening from the dream, because then you realize none of it matters. I can transcend it all, no matter what the ego seems to have done. It's unreal. And that's the Holy Spirit's only interpretation of the dream world. It's unreal, and therefore doesn't deserve any of your attention, because it simply doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so number 4, happy to move on?
Yeah, we are extension. We the extensions of perfect love. We seem to be separate and unaware of our internal unity with it. Yet behind in our doubts and past all our fears, there is still certainty. For love remains with all its thoughts, its sureness being theirs. Perfect love's memory is in our wholly aware minds, which know their oneness and their unity with their source. Let our function be only to let this memory return, only to let pure love's awareness come to everyone, only to be restored to sanity, and be only as pure formless awareness of perfect love extends us.
Okay.
Yeah, feels good.
Right.
Yeah. Just a lovely feeling. I'm just in the feeling of it.
It's not just thoughts, it's feelings. That's what he's trying to do with these words. He's trying to take you into the experience of it. And again, he's saying, our function is only this, to let this memory return, only to let perfect love's awareness come to everyone, only to be restored to sanity, to be only as pure formless awareness of perfect love extends us. That's our only function. Anything else is illusion, is a denial of that truth, of the truth of who we are. So you choose this 100% entirely, or you deny it. which means you've denied it all. You give anything else precedence over this, and you've denied it. And we do this all the time. Ego's created a world that seems to justify the denial of our one function all the time, which then is what creates the illusion of time. Ongoing time happens as long as we deny our true function. Accept our true function and time must collapse. We're back in eternity, and there is no time left. No time, no space. So pointing us to this state of mind that's still there. Certainty that, you know, there is this one awareness that's still there. It's one loving awareness, beyond time, beyond space. And our only function is to restore our mind to that awareness completely. To let go of anything that seems to block that awareness.
Okay, number 5. My source calls to me. I hear its voice and let go of all blocks to extension in the name of its source, pure formless awareness of perfect love itself, whose pure formless awareness of perfect love its own extension shares, whose pure formless awareness of perfect love is still a part of me and everyone.
Okay. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's just the part of me thing is always a bit of a jiggle, isn't it? You know, one time you say you're part of the pure formless awareness, then you can say you are pure formless awareness. Play on words a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, well, again, you know, it's using words to point to what's beyond words. So remember, he's trying to meet us where we are. It's like he meets you in your separated state. So he might use the language of separation to try and point you beyond it. So a lot of people, they might not be able to accept that I am all of it. I'm pure formless awareness of perfect love, full stop. Oh no, I'm a part of it. That's still a part of me. Okay, yeah, okay. Well, I can kind of get that. There's part of me. So that idea can help me to awaken to that. And then as I journey with it, I start realizing, well, maybe that's not just a part of me. Maybe that's all of me. Maybe that's the real self, and everything else is illusion. So it becomes all encompassing, and that awareness is all of me. It's all there really is. But that's a journey. That is the hero's journey to realize that. Right, this awareness is my whole awareness. That's all that really is. And everything else then is illusion, not simply not true. I've been believing in a bunch of illusions my entire life. With the self-concept, the ego involved, that it's going to take that as personally insulting, isn't it? It's going to go, oh, how can you say that? You know, my ego life matters. All the stuff I've done, you know, how can you say that's all an illusion? How can you say none of it matters? Of course it matters. Well, look, you know, look, I've done this, I've achieved this, I've accomplished this, I've got these possessions, I've got a family, I've got possessions, I've got a career, you know, and it uses that to justify that something's really happened. And yes, just saying, no, nothing's really happened. You know, it's just a dream. A fantasy has happened, seemingly. You're in a dream world, none of which is real. And your true awareness is unaffected by all of that. So just let it all go and return your mind to what it really is, which it always has been, always will be. But the ego is going to take that as extremely insulting. So you have to humble yourself, don't you? You have to, actually, I'm clueless. My ego doesn't know what it's doing. I'm clueless. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, well, you know, I'm open to guidance. Show me. And this other power, presence, whatever it is, God, show me. And that's when the spiritual journey starts for people in earnest, when they've been humbled like that.
Yeah.
Because then they're willing to accept this. Otherwise they go, no, I've got my own ideas. Yes, but. When people start saying yes, but, then you know they're not ready. Yes, but what about that? Yes, but what about that? Well, you're splitting your mind by saying yes, but. Yes, I conceptually acknowledge the truth of this, but I don't really want to fully accept it because of this or whatever the reason is. Yes, but what about my career? What about finances? What about my family? What about money? What about all of these things that populate people's lives? Well, they've all got to go, ultimately. None of them exist in pure formless awareness and perfect love. So you have to let them go psychologically, mentally and emotionally. You've got to let them go before they can disappear out of your awareness and out of your reality. Because you brought them into your reality by your belief in them, because you wanted them. Does that make sense? Just restores it back to the projection perception idea.
Yeah.
We created exactly the world we wanted because that's what we desired. We wanted to be a separate self, so we created a world in which we could be separate with all of its rules and laws that seem to allow us to be a separate self, a lot of which now will cause us pain and suffering. We have to see that it's our own desire to be a separate self that's behind it all. And that's what we're doing when we use this diagram. We're going to the level of the miracle, and we're saying, where's that email gone? There we go. Go back here. You see how you're collapsing in each instance where you're called upon to, you're collapsing all of this, and you're going back to the core desire. You're saying, I don't want to be a separate self anymore, because that's the whole problem. That's what created all of this. Belief, thought, emotion, perception, the veils of illusion. I want to be one self. I want to be one pure formless awareness again. And that collapses the dream world, because you're changing your mind about that fundamental idea of separation, and you're doing it moment by moment in each situation that presents itself in this mad dream that you're now seemingly engaged in down here. The bottom of the ladder of separation is an individual believing you're a victim of the world. As you have these experiences, you're changing your mind. You're choosing to let go of the idea of separation and restore your mind back to oneness. And you do that moment by moment in each situation until eventually the entire belief in the dream is gone and you're back in God, love, oneness, or pure formless awareness, and that's your only experience. Okay, so should we have a look at the lesson quickly? Happy with
yeah.
Happy with this? Where are we? Lesson 325. Back we go. Okay, so there's the key idea.
All things I think I see reflect ideas. Everything I think I see reflects ideas.
So what's he saying there, really, in essence?
Everything I see appears in front of me.
So I've got these ideas or beliefs, and what I'm seeing is a projection of thought. It's a projection of ideas. The world I see is a as one of the quantum physicists said, early quantum physicist, a guy called James Jean said, the universe begins to look more like a great thought than a great machine. Everything I think I see reflects ideas is, saying exactly that. It's a projection of my mind. So it's a projection of, and my mind thinks, my mind has ideas. So the universe is a great idea, projection of thought, of an idea outwards. And that idea is the idea of separation, which then takes many forms, many ideas. Our mind fragments. We have many ideas of separation, which get projected out into the multiplicity of forms that we see in the world, in the universe, and then reflected back to us. We go, oh, there we go. I see a person. I see an animal. I see an object. I see all this stuff, and that seems to make the idea of separation real, doesn't it? Ingenious. Project the idea out, give it a form, and then it seems to be true and real. And that's what the ego's done, to convince us that its idea of separation is true and real. But if you start seeing the truth, that everything I think I see, I'm just thinking that I see it. It's an optical delusion of consciousness, as Einstein called it. Just reflects my own ideas, and those ideas are false, then everything I think I see must be false as well. So if it's false, I can't believe it anymore. I must let go of my belief in it and accept something else, accept a deeper reality, which is my true awareness, beyond these ideas of separation. And that's what we're doing with these lessons. Systematically, progressively changing our mind, changing our ideas, saying, no, these ideas are false. Actually, all that really exists is my pure formless awareness of perfect love. Okay, so I'm going to have a little read of paragraph 1.
Long one, isn't it? This is Awakening's keynote. What I see reflects a process in my mind, which starts with my idea of what I want. From there, the mind makes up an image of the thing the mind desires, judges valuable, and therefore seeks to find. These images are then projected outward, looked upon, esteemed as real, and guarded as one's own. From insane wishes comes an insane world. From judgment comes a world condemned. And from thoughts of letting go comes a gentle world, with mercy, the wholly aware extension of perfect love, to offer it a kindly home where it can rest a while before it journeys on, and help itself in the form of other people go with it and find the way to the state of pure formless awareness to perfect love.
So this really is in words. You can, if you put this into a diagram, you'd come up with something like this, wouldn't you? He's saying we have a desire to be separate, and then that is projected out. Mind makes up an image of the thing the mind desires. Starts with my idea of what I want. I want to be a separate self. Mind makes up an image of the thing the mind desires, judges valuable, and therefore seeks to find. So that's exactly what we've done. We've projected it all out. We've made the external world real. And now we go in search of what we desire outside of us. Looked upon, esteemed as real, and guarded as one's own. So we make them real, and this becomes part of our self-concept. So I attach to something, I give it importance, and then that becomes part of my self-concept, which gets entrenched as a belief. But underneath that is a desire to be a separate self, isn't there?
Yeah, that's what I say.
And all of this becomes real because of our desire. That's what he's saying. So it's the same insight that the Buddha had. He said, desire is the source of all suffering. You desire to be a separate self. Yeshua just takes it to the desire. It's not just the desire for things in the world. It's a desire for a separate self. That's the problem. I'm not sure the Buddha quite had that insight. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But it's the desire to be a separate self that is the fundamental desire. That's the problem. And so you must correct that problem, correct that error in your mind. And you do that by collapsing, by letting go of your desire for anything outside of you, because that gives form to the desire to be a separate self. That seems to make that separate self real. And that's why the separate self concept is always attached to the externals, rather than looking within. And then it judges. So from insane wishes comes an insane world. Okay, so we can see that. You have a desire to be a separate self. And then, how do I do that? Let's just put that back there. Desire to be a separate self. Comes an insane world. Just one tiny mad idea of separation. I want to be something separate from pure formless awareness, my own self. Comes this mad world. So that's what he's saying here, which then leads to judgment. Right? So I have insane wishes, make up an insane world, and now I judge the world as not good enough. So I perceive all these things which my mind has made up, and they seem to be ugly, awful, attacking, fearful, whatever you want to label them. It's cruel, vicious, insane, and you judge it all as real, and you say this isn't right, and you judge against it. You have expectations about how reality should pan out, and then those get violated, and then you say, well, this is bad, this is wrong. And that judgment or aversion, as the Buddha called it, is the flip side of desire. I desire something, I expect something, and then the flip side of that is I judge against, and I have an aversion reaction, resistance, when what I expect doesn't happen. And those two movements, desire and judgment or condemnation of what's happened, saying that's bad, that's wrong, that makes the whole reality real, doesn't it? And it makes my self-concept real. And remember, that's all the ego is trying to do, is make that separated self-concept real through all of these movements of the mind. Convincing you that you really are a helpless, enervated little self, living a helpless, enervated little life of limitation, lack, loneliness, and suffering before you eventually die. That's its only objective, to convince you that that's true. And the entire universe is a projection of that desire to be a separate self. The stars, the planets, everything is a projection of your self-concept. But fortunately, once we're aware of that, we can let it go. Which is what he's saying. From thoughts of letting go or forgiving thoughts comes a gentle world, mercy for the holy away extension of perfect love, to offer it a kindly home where it can rest a while before it journeys on. Help itself in the form of other people. So help his brothers. I made it, and because really there's no separate self. There are no hims and hers, and it's really just one mind, seemingly taking a form, your form and other forms. And so as you help others, you're really helping yourself. You're helping the one mind to awaken from the stream of being a separate self, and find the way to heaven and to God, to find the way to the state of pure formless awareness and to perfect love, which underlies it. Okay, any thoughts on that? Feelings?
I was just thinking about something that happened the other day, and how it wasn't in my conscious mind at all that I was creating it. It's just the unconscious stuff, isn't it? That you're using the outside world to show you what's inside. But and I feel like I've let it go. But as you were talking, I was thinking, oh, maybe not, maybe a bit more work there.
Do I still get triggered? Really, that's the key. If I still get triggered by the external world, and I feel a strong emotion, or even a mild emotion, but some emotion other than perfect love, then there's still a belief in the illusion, isn't there? In the false self and self-concept and the whole projection of it and the whole illusion. It all goes together. So emotion or emotional reaction is a good arbiter of the extent of your attachment to these things. Strong emotion is a sign of ego. States of mind, states of being like peace and love and joy. I mean, they're powerful, but are they emotions, or it's a state of mind, isn't it? State of being. It just kind of has a quality of beingness. of coming home, resting in that state, rather than moving away from. You're just resting in your true home. Some people call them emotions. That's okay, but using precise terminology is helpful. So emotion is what moves you away from your essence, moves you away from the truth, takes you away from who you really are. So, the extent of your emotional reaction is a good determiner of how close or how far you are to far away from pure formless awareness of perfect love you are. You constantly have strong emotional reactions, then you're quite disconnected.
Well, I didn't have any emotion to it until you started doing this lesson. And now it's just popped up.
When you feel it, and even it's subtle, as you get more awake, it's like it becomes more subtle, because maybe you don't have those strong, violent, egoic emotions as much anymore.
No.
But it becomes subtler, and you're like, oh, okay, there's just this kind of subtle feeling of, and then you go and you look inside and you do inquiry. What is that? Okay. Well, I'm just feeling uncomfortable, and I'm feeling like a little bit less than, not quite enough. There's a fear in there, and you analyze all of that, and you go, okay, but that's just another part of the belief in separation, in a separate self concept. Oh, okay, I see it again. Oh, okay, but I can let it go again. And that's all we do. Every experience is now perceived from a perspective of oneness and awakening to that oneness. So your perception of everything is transformed, isn't it? If you see it that way.
Yeah.
It becomes the lens that replaces the egoic lens of I'm perceiving everything through my separate self-concept. The lens of the one self becomes the Christ consciousness becomes the replacement for the ego's separate self-concept.
Okay, yeah. Just come up what was at the bottom of that one. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Hate being made to do something I don't want to do. That's what that one was.
Oh, yeah, I know that. That's the authority problem. You feel like something can impose on you an external world that's not yours, and then you kind of resist that, and you feel resentful. Something or someone is trying to control you, but in fact, it's only your own ego that's trying to control you. It's coming at you from the external to mask. Everything's a mask in this world, to mask what's really going on. That it's actually in your own mind. It's your own critic or tyrant or judgmental self that's actually behind it. When you get that, you can just go, okay, enough. I see it, and I don't believe the projection anymore, and I can collapse it. I don't have to believe that anymore, and then I take appropriate action, whatever that is. You might say or do something. You might choose to let go of a relationship. The form of it will follow the realization, and then you're given the guidance as to what to do by the Holy Spirit, which fortunately can now allow you to interact quite functionally, effectively in the world based on this new thought system.
It's funny how just the little things in life sometimes indicate the deep, the kind of, I have to say bigger, but nothing's any different in size, is it? But it can be just something very minor that happens apparent outside in the illusion, and then it can take you right down to quite a deep place.
Well, that's the value of it. The slightest irritation can take you all the way, if you follow it, to the very core of your ego's desire to be a separate self. It can take you all the way down. So you have a slight irritation, a little bit of anger, and that, if you use this perception, emotion, thought, belief, it can take you all the way down to the core desire to be a separate self. And what's behind that irritation? I still want to be a separate self. It can be irritated, because that creates a self-concept, a self-definition, doesn't it? Who's irritated? I'm the one who's irritated now. Now I have some separation from myself and what's irritating me. I see that as outside of me, external to me. And so the separate self concept is reinforced. But if I see that, I can let it go, and that letting go could take me to enlightenment. If I truly let go of the self-concept that this desire has pointed to, then there would be no self-concept left, and all of my beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and perceptions would change. And then I would awaken. And this can happen.
Yeah, Eckhart Tolle did it.
But it can happen in an instant, but it can. Like Eckhart Tolle, classic example. It happened for him in a moment. He had no idea of any of this stuff, completely lost and unconscious in the dream, just very deeply unhappy. And he had a single thought that really pointed him through all of this to the core problem, which was his self-concept. And he had this thought of, well, I can't stand myself anymore. Okay, so enough pain made that not just a trivial question, that became huge. And then he realized that there must be a true I and a false self who couldn't stand himself anymore. He realized there was a split in his mind, and realized that he had to, that one of them wasn't true on a kind of very deep level. And then almost automatically, once he'd had that realization, there was a choice, and he realized that he must be the one self and the true self, and not the false self he couldn't stand. And then it was so intense that he just passed out. He said it felt like he was going into a vortex. Well, that's interesting, because it would have been like going deep within his mind. The vortex is going down, isn't it? Getting sucked into, and then going into his true self. It was so intense that he passes out and then awakens. But now that core separate self and the desire to be a separate self has just imploded. It's gone. And so now he feels kind of empty, but very peaceful. And then he started the process of reconstructing and going, okay, so what does this actually mean? How do I actually frame this? How do I understand this? And he started reading spiritual text to try and understand what had happened. Whereas we are doing a much more, okay, well, let's understand and then use the understanding to collapse more of the ego. And it's more, gradual, systematic, and progressive, which ultimately get to the same result. I mean, his experience was, probably quite traumatic. And then he was like, well, what's just happened? Am I going mad? What's just happened to me? He didn't understand it. So it can be quite difficult to deal with a sudden awakening. And it took him years to kind of process it and integrate and realize what had happened. For most people, it's going to be more gradual, using these tools and these ideas and the mind training lessons, and just doing it gradually, day by day, collapsing these beliefs systematically and progressively. So it's not necessarily one big aha moment, but it's a series of little ahas as you experience, isn't it? You get these ahas all the time in doing this work. So then, that's like a little mini awakening when you get an aha.
Okay, so it's nearly 3:00. I've got to go on a 3:00 call, so I'm going to have to leave you to finish off the last little tiny bit.
Okay, well, let me just read it to you. Our source, your ideas reflect the truth, and mine apart from yours only make up dreams. Let me behold what only yours reflect, for yours and yours alone establish truth.
So be it.
Amen.
Amen, yeah. All right, gotta go. Thank you very much. See you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, Sally. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon sometime. I think we'll do 12:30 tomorrow. But watch my emails and Telegram messages. I'll let you know. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the session. We didn't do a meditation today, but I've sent you a half-hour meditation. If you're part of the Art of Letting Go, or one of my free groups to help you to practice this. So use that meditation to meditate on the lesson, or the 5-minute breath break recording, which is also posted on one of those groups. in the Telegram group or one of the other groups that I send it to. So thanks for listening, and namaste. This means the truth in me, the true self in me, acknowledges and honors that same true self in you.